1905. Throughout the past century, the many railroads of the United States of America have proven time and time again that no matter how impossible something may seem at first, they will always find a way to get their services anywhere. There seems to be no mountain too high or valley too low for the steam locomotive to handle with style. However, one such man going by the name of Henry Flagler has just proposed something which may end up breaking that streak. According to American Rails, he had already made millions in oil, but evidently, that wasn't enough. Taking his Florida East Coast Railroad from Miami, a town he himself had developed considerably, all the way down to Key West, the final island on a chain just south of the peninsula. It took Flagler some convincing to get this plan off the ground.
Say, I've got an idea. Perhaps we can run our trains all the way down those islands, down to Key West. It would give us some pretty sick training opportunities in Cuba and Latin America. Can we do it? No. Please? No. Please? No. Please? Alright, fine.
So it was decided, and construction was commenced earlier this year. We've asked some Florida residents their thoughts on the subject.
Trains on the ocean? Pfft, don't be ridiculous. I could just take my boat there if I wanted to. It only takes like 3 days. What's the big deal? Oh, that sounds impossible. This route will never be finished. Oh, Flagler's on one of his follies again? Typical of him. I used to work for the guy, and he's always had crazy ideas, but this just takes the cake. Actually, I rather like the idea. I've always wanted to go to Key West. Sounds like a great retirement home. I hope this is completed soon. Did I say it right?
1907. Needless to say, several people were convinced on the idea of an extension to Key West. It's been a few years since then, and construction is well underway. In fact, we've asked some Florida East Coast workers in one of their huts about their experiences.
Well, construction is going just splendidly. We just finished the roadbed on Stock Island, and a couple weeks ago, we finished the supply depot on Alamorada. Well, a couple of my friends died a month or two back from drinking so-called tiger booze. At least that's what the KWAHS told me. Weaklings, I say. Those stupid mosquitoes are... even inside, they're so annoying. Even though I'm working on this, I still don't see the appeal. I mean, taking a train down to Key West? Can't people just take a boat? I mean, come on.
1912. After some other incidents and 3 hurricanes, the extension has just been completed against all odds. The first train with Flagler and his wife arrived a week ago and made history. Tickets for passenger trains to the Florida Keys, such as the Havana Special and the Oversea, are now being sold. Flagler is anticipating his new route to be a money-making powerhouse in both freight and passenger traffic. Here's what some of the locals have to say.
How? How was this even possible to do? I never wanted a engine in 100 years. Trains going over the sea. Great. That means more tourists are coming. Frickin' jerks. What next? Is that crazy man going to build tracks all the way down to Cuba? I never thought I'd live to see the day when the impossible happened. And after I saw the ticket prices, I wish I didn't.
1920. Unfortunately, freight traffic was not as lucrative as the railroad anticipated, mostly just consisting of coal, fruit, building materials, and drinking water. Even in passenger services, the trains are usually restricted to only 15 miles per hour on the long bridges down the Florida Keys. The tourists had this to say.
I took the train to Key West because I thought it wouldn't take as long, but it was so slow. I was asleep by the time my train arrived, and by the time I woke up, we were already heading back to Miami. Would not recommend. The brochure said this place would have the best fishing in the world, but I was out on the water for 3 weeks straight and barely got a nibble. And now I have depression. A Great Depression, if you will. Take my advice. Do not come here during the summer. My sister-in-law caught on fire while we were at the beach, and there was no water around to put her out. I don't even bother taking the train when going to Key West. I mean, have you seen the ticket prices? It's like $2! What a ripoff!
1935. Despite its shortcomings in many different areas, the railroad was still in service, although that may change very shortly. We have just gotten word that a massive storm is on its way to the Florida Keys, the likes of which you only see once in a lifetime. The Florida East Coast has already sent out an evacuation train to Matecumbe to rescue the Great War veterans on the island. We also sent our camera crews over there to ask the veterans their thoughts on the impending storm.
I haven't seen anything this frightening since that Great War. Hope we don't have another one of those. Yeah, this is nothing. I slept through much worse than this during the war. It'll just blow right past us. When's this evacuation train coming? The winds have already blown my dog all the way to Mexico. Hi, yeah, they got great food over there. I knew I should have gone to California instead. Things like this wouldn't happen there. Right?
As it turns out, the storm was not as bad as it appeared to be as it was approaching. It was far, far worse. As soon as the evacuation train arrived, all 9 passenger cars were swept away in a massive storm surge, with only the locomotive and its tender staying upright. Unfortunately, the interview clips we showed earlier were some of the last words we have ever heard from those veterans. On top of that, much of the infrastructure of both the Florida Keys in general and the Flagler extension was heavily damaged by the strong wind and storm surge. At this point, we aren't sure, but it's very unlikely that the extension will be rebuilt after this disaster. We asked some Florida East Coast workers their thoughts on the matter.
Want me to be honest? Yeah? Well, it's totaled. No hope in any trains ever running to Key West again.
Already? It took us so long to get this stupid extension finished, and it's already been swept away? I am definitely not going through all that again.
Oh, that money-losing Key West extension got swept away? Ain't my problem. Not paying enough to care. I mean, if anything, this is a good thing. Taking the boat to Key West is much more relaxing anyway.
1936. I have just gotten word from the Florida East Coast Railroad on some news about the Key West extension. That news being that, due to both the extension losing money for the company thanks to insufficient freight traffic, and the severe damage caused by the storm, it will not be repaired and returned to normal operations. There will be no more trains running down the Florida Keys, and the islands will once again only be accessible by boat for most people, unless the Florida Guidebook is to be believed and a road may be built in its place. For all intents and purposes, the late Henry Flagler achieved what he set out to do: connect the continental US with the Florida Keys via railroad tracks. Did it seem feasible? No. Was it completely impossible to do? As it turned out, also no. Despite everything, he achieved the seemingly impossible, but at a significant cost. Of all the Florida East Coast routes, the Key West extension was by far the biggest money loser. Ultimately, would it even be worth doing such a ludicrous task like this? To pursue something that people gave you nothing but ridicule for, due to it seeming impossible, then potentially prove them wrong? Only to face ridicule again if it ends up delivering lackluster results. I am not going to say that nothing is impossible, because that's a lie. There are all things that are impossible, things you can't achieve. However, if you find yourself facing something and thinking to yourself, "Oh, that's impossible," then prove it. Prove that it's just as impossible as it seemed to be at the outset. You may end up surprising both yourself and the people around you, and maybe, just maybe, you'll find yourself in a better spot than before.